He presented his initiative to Hamas leaders in the West Bank, headed by Aziz Twake, and got their full consent. The pressure on Hamas leadership abroad, on Mashal, was hence aggravated, fearing an internal rift on this issue, this popular issue of overcoming the split between Gaza and the West Bank. Hamas, as a Palestinian offspring of the Muslim Brothers, cannot theologically accept political settlement with Israel, which entails, by definition, political concessions. For this reason, Hamas has rejected since 2002 an Arab homegrown initiative, which is called the Arab Peace Initiative. And it goes without saying that Hamas is rejecting today the conditions of the Quartet Initiative, which, according to the Hamas, is imposed by foreigners. But Hamas also rejects a homegrown Arab political initiative because it entails political concessions to Israel. Hamas is ready to declare that its present aim is to establish a Palestinian state on 67 lines, which, of course, while emphasizing the full right of return of the refugees and the total denial of any swaps. But the main point here is that the Hamas is very careful and very consistent not to mention whatsoever that the Palestinian state would coexist with the state of Israel even on 67 lines in the framework of a political settlement. Hamas can adjust itself to the management of the conflict, which comprises ceasefire, off time, a kind of a truce, you know, the Arabic word, hudna, tadia, and so forth. So Hamas can accept the management of the conflict in contrast to the political solution of the conflict. For Hamas, the process is the substance, as it empties the substance of any content which contradicts its full Islamic solution. In the opinion of the Hamas, there exists only one solution, and this is the Islamic one at the expense of the existence of Israel. But here comes the catch for the Hamas. Hamas, as a part and parcel of the Muslim Brotherhood, is not a sect like Al-Qaeda and cannot retire to the sidelines of society. Its what can be called echo chamber is the Palestinian society as a whole. The internal tension in the Hamas, as it is within every branch of the Muslim Brothers according to its own circumstances. So the internal tension does not erupt when most of the society shares the notion of the management of the conflict as far as the Palestinians are concerned. It erupts when there is a real advancement of the political process towards a settlement. Here, the Hamas is caught in a contradiction between its adherence to its interpretation of Islamic axioms, according to its, of course, own understanding, and its commitment and responsibility to the Palestinian society as a whole. In the case of the absence of any political mobility, the inner contradictions of Hamas remain dormant or latent. But a real political advancement which attracts the approval of the great bulk of the Palestinian society, including in Gaza, will inflict havoc within the ranks of the Hamas, and the Hamas, according to my estimate, will surely splinter. Hence, the dwindling chances of the political settlement strengthen the influence of the Hamas and encourage it. There is a sort of antagonistic collaboration in consequences and not in intentions and points of departure, not only between Fatah and Hamas, but as well between the rivals from the two sides of the hill, on the both sides of the hill, Israel and the government of Israel and the Hamas. The absence of any political advancement immunizes Hamas from its own internal contradictions. So, if you want to weaken Hamas and embarrass it in front of the Palestinian population, including in Gaza, you must embroil it in a historical context of a real and concrete political framework. A clear indication of the political divergences within Hamas in case of political advancement surfaced in the wake of Mashal's speech and interviews in Cairo, in the ceremony of signing the reconciliation in Cairo. As mentioned, Mahmoud Azahar was outraged, blaming Mashal of being disloyal to the ideology and the policy of Hamas. An official reaction by Hamas, headed by Mashal, insisted that Mashal, in spite of the declaration of Azahar, Mashal expressed the attitudes of the Hamas. A hint that the criticism of Azahar, this was the actual transgression and not Mashal declaration. But this quarrel was suppressed swiftly under the basic assumption by both that the present position of Israel and the United States in the wake of Netanyahu's visit to Washington guarantees that there is no wish on the part of both Israel and the United States to initiate for the time being a real political option. The calculation of Hamas is quite simple and, may I say, to my dismay, realistic. The lack of political advancement will lead within a year, culminating in the elections in April-May 2012, to the victory of the Hamas. It means that Hamas will take the reins in the West Bank, but now through political means. But now, the main focus of the Hamas will be, first of all, to seize the power in the PLO or of the PLO, which constitutes the source of legitimacy for the political option. By undermining this source of authority, Hamas will inflict the final blow to the political paradigm. Thus, the fact that Hamas came to the reconciliation somewhat crippled and couldn't submit such preconditions as the abrogation of the political option on the one hand, and on the other hand, a full endorsement to pursue, to go on with the military resistance, mukawama, by all means. But this fact was compensated strategically, or is compensated strategically, by the potential failure of the political paradigm. By this token, Hamas sacrifice of assets in the short range would grant it full victory at the end of the year. Now it is clear why Abu Mazen is seeking so desperately for a real political option. Without it, the net which he hoped to cast in order to trap Hamas would become his own trap. Until now, the Obama administration has focused on desisting Abu Mazen from going to the UN, going unilaterally to the UN. But he can't do it only if there is a viable political option. It is very simple. In spite of the reconciliation agreement with Hamas, he is pursuing the political option and brought, in the wake of the reconciliation accord, he brought the executive committee of the PLO to endorse the parameters presented in the speech of President Obama at the State Department in May 2011. All this to the dismay of the Hamas. But the Hamas is leashed now. I understand that this position of endorsing Obama's parameters was expressed also as well in the last meeting of Saeb Erekat in Washington. It seems to me also that Abu Mazen approaching application to the Security Council and the General Assembly in September would include also an explicit reference to the parameters of Obama. Would it remain a whistle in the darkness? Would Obama contradict Obama? Going to the UN in September remains the default position of Abu Mazen in the absence of any concrete political achievement. September 2011 may be a crucial date because of the overall agitation among the Palestinians, which can ignite an explosive climate in the Palestinian-Israeli arena. It will not originate out of an order or a decision from above, either by Abu Mazen or the Hamas, but from the grassroots as a matter of resentful climate of opinion, especially under the influence or the inspiration of the chain of reaction between Israeli forces and the Palestinians, and the other one, the upheavals, the surrounding upheavals in the Arab region. Neither Abu Mazen nor the Hamas have an interest in the eruption of violent Third Intifada in September. Abu Mazen abhors it in principle, and Hamas needs a year in order to galvanize its achievements in elections. But it will erupt as an expression, as I said, of a public opinion, and again inspired by the surrounding agitation in the Arab region. All in all, in order to weaken the Hamas, you have to engage it, namely to embroil it in a real political process. You don't have to recognize the Hamas because it would not recognize you. I'm talking as an Israeli citizen, not you as an American, but I'm talking about Israel now. But you have to proceed with those who are ready to proceed with you as if there is no reconciliation accord between the Hamas and Fatah. Why? because most of the Palestinian population in the West Bank and Gaza support a successful political process. And, of course, successful with results. The surest way to save Hamas from itself is through obstructing the political process. This, regretfully, would be culminated with the final victory of the Hamas. There exists a world of difference between the rejection of Hamas until it accepts the quartet conditions, which I fully endorse, and an objection to deal with Abu Mazen on the political settlement because his cabinet will include some independent experts nominated by Hamas. There is an abyss in the abyss between a viable political process and a total stalemate. In order to have a viable political solution, Hamas must be integrated and, I think, split, and later, in fact, to cease being Hamas as it is today. Because Hamas cannot retire from the Palestinian society as a whole. Hence, if we aspire to weaken the Hamas as well as to sustain the existence of Israel as a viable Jewish and democratic state, we must pursue the way to a two-state solution. It may be true, as it was said by my Prime Minister, that the conflict is irresolvable because it is territorial, but on one condition. But on the condition that you are not ready to address the territorial settlement of the conflict based on Clinton plan, on Obama parameters, or based, I'm not talking about full adherence to it, of the Arab Peace Initiative. There is no differences in principle between them. If the conflict is irresolvable, there remains only one possibility, and this is one-state solution. I, as an Israeli citizen, think that such a possibility contradicts the very essence of the values and interests of the State of Israel. Thank you very much.